Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to the session. My name is Somajit Goswami and you're watching this on Competition Crusade YouTube channel. Now, today we are looking at the CAT 2022 question paper VRC slot 1. We are doing an analysis of passage number 2 that is based on the Undead. A word of caution before we start with the analysis is that go and watch this video in 1.5x speed. That will make your viewing experience enhanced. Having said that, this was a doable, readable reading comprehension passage. However, I have a few pointers in my mind that I need to share with you all before I go full-fledged into reading it and solving it. So I just want to take you to one of the question types, and this was perhaps in the recent past CAT we are all witnessing. So if you could see question number 15, I'll zoom in a bit. Don't worry. Just read the question, don't worry. We will do an in-depth reading of the passage and then we will solve the questions. But I want to teach you something. Yesterday I was, in the last session rather, I was talking about the critical reasoning aspect of the CAT RCs. Critical reasoning is not present as a separate question types in the CAT VA section. But you see the glimpses of critical reasoning question in the RCs itself. So this is one of those. Question is simple. All of the following statements, if false, could be seen as being in accordance with the passage except. Okay, so just a word of caution whenever you read such a, so there are two things. Okay, normally the average janta is going to skip this question. Okay, the stupid students will pick this question and try to solve this without putting pen on paper. I mean, you can solve it without putting pen on paper, that's a different thing, but that even in quants there are certain questions that you can do without putting pen on paper. That is not a magic that is happening over there. It's all neural networks that have already been created in the past. So what basically, the moral of the story is that the buddhiman people leave it, the stupid ones attempt it, and the smart ones, the ones who are getting these type of questions correct, their scaled scores in the VA section will automatically go up, because please understand, now you are the smart people, the ones who are high scorer, the top scorer. So these are the type of question that you should ideally not leave unless until of course you don't have time for analysis. And please understand, they will take some more time for analysis also. This is not going to be as easy just reading the question type and solving it. So why am I saying this? Just read the question and appreciate the question. All of the following statements, so we are looking at all of the following statements, if false, could be seen as being in accordance with the passage except. So if false being in accordance with, obviously this is not a double negative. This is there is a double negative question also in this lot 1 of CAT last year. We will go into that. There was a passage based on the stoicism and whatnot. But understand, let us make a template. Okay, so let me create some space for myself. Okay, why is it important? Because you need to know how to attempt certain types of questions. Okay, so what exactly is the template that I'm talking about? So all statements, so I'm using shorthand, all statements, if false, is in accordance with the passage, that is, strengthens the passage. And my handwriting really is doing something over there. Now please understand, if they are false, they are strengthening the passage, is as good as saying if they are true, they will weaken. Now understand, these are your incorrect option choices, and there will be how many incorrect option choices? 3 incorrect option choices. One statement, this SM is for statement, one statement, if true, will strengthen. If true, will strengthen. What does this mean? Obviously this is the except. This is the except statement that is given over there. If false could be seen as being in accordance with the passage. What am I saying? I'm saying there is going to be one statement, that is, if that statement is true, that will strengthen what? The argument, or in general the passage. That will strengthen the passage, or it will strengthen the argument. Obviously this is not a critical reasoning question type, so you will not find a single paragraph in which you can do all of this. But can I do this in my mind? Mentally, can I do this? If you can do it, kudos to you, you are a good student. But if you can't do this, understand this is a standard template. So what are we looking at? If a statement that is true, it will strengthen, so we are looking at something that follows with the passage. So effectively now you see the question becomes so easy. Last to last video, I think I received one of the comments in which I was asked, how is it that you are doing the reasoning so quickly? So this is how we do the reasoning quickly. It's actually not quickly, there's a methodical way. So you can actually call this entire thing a fairly decent reasoning exercise. Okay, and please understand, because we are talking about verbal reasoning, so this is a reasoning exercise. Okay, this is a verbal reasoning exercise. Is it mandatory? Is it necessary? Definitely. Without this, you'll not be able to answer this question. Now let's read the passage and solve the questions. I don't think it will take more than 15 minutes, but again, let's see. At this point in time, I will again tell you, pause the video and go to the description and read the passage slowly. Come back. You might want to skip my reading thing. If you want to skip it, you can skip it and just directly jump to the questions. That way you will save your time. Okay. So what are we looking at? Just a second. Stories concerning the undead. So we are talking about the undead. So this probably is the theme of this passage. Stories concerning undead have always been with us. From out of the primal darkness of mankind's earliest years comes the whisper of eerie creatures, not quite alive, or alive in a way which we can understand, yet not quite dead either. These may have been ancient and primitive deities who dwelt deep in the surrounding of forest and remote places, or simply those deceased who refused to remain in their tombs and who wandered about the countryside, physically tormenting and frightening those who were still alive. Mostly they were ill-defined strange sounds in the night beyond the comforting glow of the fire, or a shape half glimpsed in the twilight along with the edge of an encampment. They were vague and indistinct, but they were always there with the power to terrify and disturb. They had the power to touch the mind of our early ancestors and fill them with dread. Such fear formed the basis of the earliest tales, although the source and exact nature of such terror still remained very vague. So on and on, the first para talks about some sort of a gothic mystery related undead creatures. Okay, I don't know if I can call them undead creatures, but undead for sure, the ones who are not living and the ones who are not dead. Okay, so the undead creatures. If you want to make an analog in your mind, you can probably think of a vampire, a Dracula, a werewolf, or something of that sort. Okay, I know I am stretching this out of the scope of this passage at this point in time, but you can do it. It's just a mental exercise. And as mankind become more sophisticated, leaving the gloom of their caves and forming themselves into recognizable communities, towns, cities, whole cultures, so the undead traveled with them, inhabiting their folklore just as they had in former times. Now they began to take on more definite shape. They became walking cadavers, physical embodiment of former deities and things which had existed alongside man since the creation. Okay, so talking about bullshit, for me it is. Some still remained vague, ill-defined, but mankind strove to explain the horror which it felt towards them. Such creatures emerged more readily into the light. So basically, again, they're talking about how the undead have traveled with the evolution of mankind, the folklore or the thinking or the something of that sort. nonsensical. In order to confirm their abnormal status, many of the undead were often accorded attributes. Now we are looking into the attributes of these people, undead, which defied the natural order of things, the power to transform themselves into other shapes, the ability to sustain themselves by drinking human blood, okay, and the ability to influence human mind across a distance. Such powers, described as supernatural, only lent an added dimension to the terror that humans felt regarding them. So we are constantly talking about the terror that human beings are feeling for these creatures. Okay, interesting. Now the last paragraph, or the last two paragraphs. And yet it was only natural that the undead should become connected. So this was only natural too, that the undead should be connected with the practices of magic. Okay, so we are talking about magic also. So okay, from early times, shamans, sort of priests, you can say, North American people, witch doctors had claimed at least some power and control over the spirits of departed ancestors, and this has continued down into more civilized time. Formerly the invisible spirit and forces that thronged around men's earliest encampments had spoken through the tribal shamans, but now as entities in their own right, they were subject to magical control and could be physically summoned by the competent sorcerer. Okay, so initially it was the shamans who were doing this practice of, you know, this witchcraft, or not exactly witchcraft, but calling the undead. But now we are looking at some sorcerers also doing this practice. Okay. However, the relationship between the magician and the undead creature was often very tenuous and uncertain one. So we are talking about this. So this is an important line. And why is it important? That suddenly, speaking of the undead and how they connected with their shamans or the sorcerers, we're talking about a connection of the relationship that was between the undead and the magician. And it was an uncertain one. It was very tenuous and uncertain one. This is a difficult word, tenuous. Some sorcerers might have even become undead entities once they died, but they might have also been susceptible to the power of other magicians when they did. Okay. So some shamans, if they die, they'll also become, or sorcerers, when they die, they can also become undead. Interesting. From the Middle Ages into the Age of Enlightenment, theories of the undead continued to grow and develop. Okay, so basically the theories are only growing and it is developing from the Middle Ages into the Age of Enlightenment. Their names become more familiar: werewolf, vampire, ghoul, each one certain to strike a fear into the hearts of ordinary humans. All right. Okay, so my commentary on this one, I thought this was a rubbish passage, honestly speaking. Not exactly not the type of a passage. This is a total magazine cutout. I don't think any intelligent fellow will, I mean, people can agree to disagree, but then I'm saying, how can this be a cat RC passage? This is the most illogical passage that I have seen to read. This was a fairly easy read. Questions, however, let's see. Okay, so let's look into the question. Which one of the following statements best describes what the passage is about? So we'll read and try to understand. The passage discusses the evolution of theories of the undead from primitive thinking to the Age of Enlightenment. Actually, we can keep this one because we are talking about the undead, and then we are doing some sort of a analysis of what the primitive thinking was and how they evolved as the Age of Enlightenment come. So this is something, the first statement looks like the answer. We'll keep it. The passage describes the failure of human beings to fully comprehend their environment. Actually, this is not something to do with human beings to comprehend their environment. So goes out. The writer discusses the transition from primitive thinking to the Age of Enlightenment. Primitive thinking of what? Goes out. The writer describes the ways in which undead come to be associated with the shamans and the practice of magic. This is one of the aspects, that the undeads were associated with the shamans and the practice of magic, but this is not in entirety the what describes the passage. Okay, not at all. And why is it that I'm saying that? All the arguments does not lead to this as the main idea or the primary purpose, you can also say. So one has to be the answer, that ways. In order to confirm their abnormal status, many of the undead were often accorded attribute which defied the natural order of things. The natural order of things, which one of the following best expresses the claim made in this statement? So understand what we are looking at. We are looking at one of the following that expresses the claim that was made in this statement. Which statement? The abnormal status. That was, you know, the powers that these people also, if you want, you can go back to the passage, you can pause at this point, you can read the passage also in the description. Let's read the option. I don't really think I need to go back. The undead are defied in nature's order by giving them divine attribute. Is it true? No, they are not given divine attributes. This word divine itself, you know, gives you some sort of a hint. According the undead, an abnormal status is to reject the natural order of things. No, this is not something that best expresses the claim made from the statement that, you know, there is some sort of an abnormal status related to the undead, and that is why, you know, they were accorded some of the attributes. But this is not done to reject the natural order of things. So that ways we can eliminate this one also. Human beings conceptualize the undead as possessing abnormal features. So this is one thing. So as human beings, we conceptualize the undead as possessing abnormal features. I'll keep this one. The natural attributes of the undead are rendered abnormal by changing their status. No, goes out. So this is the answer. All of the following statement, if this is the one which we were, you know, in the beginning we did a lot of reasoning exercise. So I will again take you to this thing. I will ask you to sort of, you know, understand this template. And guys, please understand that this is not a standard template. This is not a standard template in the sense that you can fit in this thing as, you know, once and for all. If you find a question like this, if false could be seen as accordance, and this is the standard. So this is not the standard template. This holds true only for this passage, or rather this question type. If there is a different question type, we can possibly, you know, design a different template. Okay, so what did we talk about in this question? It talk about all of the statement, if true, will strengthen the passage. Okay, that is an incorrect. If all the statements were false, that will strengthen the passage. We were supposed to find 3 statements. Those 3 statements will be incorrect. There is, and it is as, you know, congruent is a bad word, but it's as equal as saying that there are 3 statements that if they're true, they can weaken the, you know, statement or the passage, weaken the passage in general. There is one statement, however, that is, if that statement is true, that will strengthen the passage. That is the correct and the except statement also. Okay, you know, decently interesting question. So let's read the options. The undead remain vague and ill-defined even as mankind strove to understand the horror they inspired. If true, this will weaken the statement. If this were true, this will weaken the statement. Understand this. If the undead remain vague and ill-defined even as mankind strove to understand the horror they inspired. This is not the case, because this will weaken the structure also. As humankind, you know, improved, or you can say evolved, these things also, you know, simultaneously started growing from the, you know, from just the eerie noises in the woods to becoming more and more visible, you know, attributing some sort of unnatural qualities like drinking blood and ships shifting. These were also the things. So they did not remain vague and ill-defined as mankind, you know, grow to understand or strove to understand the horror that they inspired. So if this were true, this would weaken the argument. So in that sense, this is out. Next one. The relationship between shamans and the undead was believed to be strong and stable one. Actually, this is there in the passage, but please understand, before going to the passage, let's read the template also. If true would weaken the statement passage. Okay, this is very important. This strengthening weakening business is only related to the passage. Okay, does not do anything to the question in general. So it is written, I think, somewhere over there, that the relationship between the magicians and the undead creatures were often tenuous and uncertain one. So when they say that that is a stable one, we have some sort of problem. So if this statement were true, this will weaken, because they say it was an uncertain relationship between the undead and the magicians. Here it is saying the shamans and the undead was believed to have a strong and stable one. So obviously something that is not in the passage, that will weaken the passage, the argument rather. Okay, I hope you understand. Okay, this is not very difficult. It's just when you speak so much, you can, you know, sometimes blabber gibberish also. So yeah. The third one. The growing sophistication of mankind meant that humans stopped believing in the undead. This is completely false. And if this were true, this would weaken the, because as the mankind also evolved, the things that you know, the undead also evolved with them. So it is not that the growing sophistication of mankind meant the humans stopped believing in the undead. So that way this is false. Basically we have eliminated all the three options, so this has to be true. Let's read it any which ways. The transition from the Middle Ages to the Age of Enlightenment saw new theories of the undead. That is, if this were true, this will strengthen the passage, strengthen the argument of the passage. Did you understand the logic of how we solve this? If you did, you are in the right track. If you did not, comment it down in the comment section. Okay. The last question. Which one of the following observation is a valid conclusion to draw from the statement? So we are trying to draw a conclusion from the statement. From out of the primal darkness of mankind's earliest year come whispers of eerie creatures, not quite alive, or alive in a way which we can understand, yet not quite dead either. So I hope this is the first line of the first para. I hope you remember this. Even if you don't, you can just pause and go to the description. You can read it. I will read the options, and if I feel necessary, I'll go back to the passage. So conclusion we are trying to draw. Mankind's primal years were marked by creatures alive with eerie whispers, but seen only in the darkness. Is this a valid conclusion that we can draw? Is this the sort of conclusion that can be drawn from this statement, that mankind's primal year were marked by creatures alive with eerie whispers? Definitely not. Goes out. Mankind's early years were marked by a belief in the existence of eerie creatures that were neither quite alive or dead. So this is bang on. So this has to be my answer. Obviously we will not stop at it. You know, I can say, I would have said that we will keep this option, but this is, you know, too good to be true. This is too much of a perfect option. Let's read the other options any which way. We can understand the lives of the eerie creatures in mankind's early years through their whispers in the darkness. Actually, these lives of the eerie creatures, actually these eerie creatures are not alive. They are something transcendental, beyond life and death. So we cannot understand the lives of the eerie creatures. Goes out. Long ago, eerie creatures used to whisper in the primal darkness that they were not quite dead. So this is again nonsensical. Goes out. So that's it. This is it for this analysis. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe नहीं कर रहे हो आप लोग, सब्सक्राइब करो, लाइक करो, थोड़ा सा you know हमें भी अच्छा फील करवाओ. आप लोगों के लिए इतना फ्री में ला रहे हैं कंटेंट, थोड़ा you know the drill. Like, share, subscribe.